All right, everybody, I want to welcome you to today's Wednesday webinar here at TimeSolv. This is Scott Clayson, Director of Marketing at TimeSolv. Thank you for taking some of your time today at the beginning of the new year to learn the tips and tricks to get the most out of your TimeSolv account. I'm going to wait another couple of minutes, maybe another minute or two, just to let people who might be straggling in get settled at their computer and ready to roll. So for those of you that have already joined us, feel free to take another minute here to grab a glass of water, you know, fire out that last email, do whatever you need to do, and then we'll roll up our sleeves and get into things here in just another minute or so. So hang tight, everybody. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with our webinar today. It's a couple of minutes after the top of the hour. I want to welcome everyone who's joining us, either taking a lunchtime or if you're out on the West Coast, a mid-morning break to listen to some of the ways you can get more out of your TimeSolv account. As I mentioned, for those who are just joined us, my name is Scott Clayson. I'm the Director of Marketing at TimeSolv. And just to kind of recap what our purpose here is today, this is kind of, if you will, excuse me, I went one slide ahead already. This is our CLE for TimeSolv, where we like to go over in a webinar format the tip of the week emails that we send out to all of our admins and firm owners once a week, generally on Mondays. So we like to recap once a month the 4 previous tip of the weeks, so you can actually see them in action and not have to necessarily read about them. As always, we'll be recording this, and I will send out a link to the recording once it gets processed and sent back to me. And everyone is on mute. So if you do have questions about anything that we're covering here, you can always put a question. I do ask that questions come after we've finished up, because many people will oftentimes have their question answered maybe 30 seconds, a minute or two later as I go through the full explanation of whatever the feature is that I'm discussing. We should take about, this one will take maybe 30 to 40 minutes, I'm guessing. It won't take the full hour, I don't think, that we're scheduled for this webinar. I feel like I'm missing, oh, that yes, when you do want to ask a question, you should see somewhere on your screen an area where there's a Q&A icon. And if you click on that Q&A icon, then you can go ahead and ask a question of me that I will answer for you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the topics that we want to cover today. I actually accidentally gave you a sneak preview. I'm assuming that everyone can see my screen okay. You should see the slide that says TimeSolv Wednesday webinar, tips and tricks to get the most out of it. If you, for whatever reason, can't see it, please let me know in the Q&A, but I believe I did share my screen for everyone to see. Okay, so here's the 4 topics that I want to cover today during our webinar. The first one is a feature that we rolled out, I want to say maybe about a year ago, And that is how you can designate certain clients and matters with various billing categories, and then generate your invoices based on the category that you have designated. And this comes into play for those clients where you may not do traditional monthly billing. You may only bill them annually. You may bill them quarterly. They might be contingency type of matters that you're working on where you only bill them, when the matter has been fully resolved. So you do want to make sure that the invoices don't get generated for open time entries when you're creating invoices for all of your other clients. So I'll walk through about how you set up your billing categories and how you can go about applying them to clients and matters, and then how it's impacted when you actually create your draft invoices. So that'll be our first topic that we'll cover. The second one is a new feature that we rolled out sometime, I believe, in mid-December, so not even a month ago. And we have now added the ability to determine if you charge interest on unpaid invoices, whether that interest is going to be simple or compound interest. Up until this change, we were only doing compound interest when calculating that amount every time there was a new invoice created that had interest on it, or like a statement or whatever the case may be that had then the interest that needed to be paid. So we'll walk through how to set up whether you want to have simple or compound interest for your clients and matters. Then our third topic is another new feature that we've just recently rolled out. And that is, you will now, if you have, and for those of you that sat in on some previous Wednesday webinar, you may recall, you do now have the ability in the time entry search area to search for any timers that might be running. We also now have a new feature where when you go to create your draft invoices, if you have a running timer, and I don't mean just you, but any timekeeper using TimeSolv, it'll give you a notice that, hey, you have a running timer. It's not going to be that entry. Obviously, won't be placed on an invoice because it's being, there's a timer running for it. So then it'll take you directly to the screen where you can check on that entry. So I'll show you how you can do that. And then we also thought this was the last tip of the week that just came out on Monday. It's the new year, obviously. So this is a time and an opportunity where there will be rate changes that should be implemented across the firm as best practices. It's always a good idea to be updating your rates once a year to keep up with inflation and so on. But that obviously will have some impacts. So we'll walk through where you go about doing those rate changes and how to deal with the fallout of doing that for the time entries that you already have in place. So those are the topics that we are going to cover today. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about billing categories. So let me go ahead and bring up my TimeSolv account here, my dummy account. And let me go ahead and log in. So one of the issues that we found people came to us with and why we implemented billing categories is that you don't bill every single client the same. And some clients you might bill, as I mentioned previously, quarterly, some annually, some on contingency. And before we implemented this change about a year ago, it was essentially up to the billing person to remember when creating draft invoices, which firms do I not, need to create invoices for, and which ones do I need to create invoices for. So we went ahead and created billing categories. Okay, so what does that look like, and how do you enact them? What you want to do is head over under your clients and matters area over here on the left-hand part of the screen down to your settings. Across all of these tabs that you have, if you haven't noticed this before, we have a tab at the very end on the right-hand side called Billing Categories. You click on that, and you can simply then add as many billing categories as you might need. Some firms, you might create billing categories depending on the area of practice, because maybe you generate all of your invoices by practice area. So you want to generate all family law invoices at once. And then you want to do all real estate transactional work is another category. So you can set up your categories however you'd like. I just did mine based on, as I was talking to you, like if there could be clients that you bill annually, some that are contingency based, traditional monthly billing, you can set that category, or quarterly billing. So you can set up as many as you like. You just come over here to new billing category, click on that, and create the name of the category and a description if you need to. So it's that simple to create your billing category. You can even change the label for how it will appear on the clients and matters. I know some of our own employees that used to work for law firms and did billing, they would call them billing queues instead of a billing category. So you could call the label this whatever you'd like to label it that works best for your firm, and use this in whatever fashion you'd like. So once you've created these billing categories, let's talk about how you would go ahead and apply them at the client and matter level. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my clients and matters, and then you would simply select any client here. I'm going to click on Aretha, and in the invoice settings is where you can designate a billing category. Now by default, it's going to have none specified. If you choose a billing category here at the client level, it will automatically assign that category at the matter level below it. You can also, if you don't designate a specific billing category at the client level, you can go ahead and do it at the matter level. So I'm going to click on estate plan. I'm going to go to my invoice settings, and you notice here's the other billing category here. I've chosen billing, quarterly billing. You can assign multiple categories, by the way, to clients and matters depending on your needs. So I've chosen quarterly billing as the billing arrangement for Aretha and this estate plan. Now, what that means is when I go ahead and create my draft invoice, let's go over to the draft invoice screen, and I'm going to go ahead and void out these drafts that I have. Now, Aretha, as you saw, had quarterly billing designated as her category. So I go to create new draft invoices, and if you'll notice that there is a row here called billing category, and this is where you could choose the category you'd like. If I don't specify any, then it's going to create invoices for all of those clients and matters that we didn't bother to touch it with the billing category. So in this case, if I go back and I'm going to do for Q4 from October 1st to December 31st, I have no category specified. When I go to create these invoices now, you'll notice Aretha is not on here because Aretha, as my client, already has a specified billing category. And when I created these drafts, I said, I don't want to have any billing category specified. Just create the default, if you will. So that invoice has not been created during that time period. I can come back here and say, yes, generate invoices only for those clients and matters that have a category of quarterly billing. And again, if I do that date range back to Q4, October 1st through December 31st, I hit create. Now you can see I have Aretha with the matter estate plan and the amount I have and so on, because it's pulling the time entries for that date range, the Q4. And I have a couple of other clients, it looks like, or one client who has that same quarterly billing arrangement. So this is how you could generate all of your drafts in chunks based on the category. So in this case, I'm just creating invoices for only those people that I bill quarterly. And you could do that with contingency. You could do that again with, well, however, whatever categories you create, you could do it by practice area. So there's some flexibility in how exactly you want to apply this, but it's the idea that you could generate your draft invoices based on some different criteria other than what you get up here, which is right now the defaults are you can create them for just all clients, all matters, specifically just my matters that are assigned to me, or those by responsible professionals. So there's lots of different things you can do with these billing categories if you need to, okay? So I think it's a nice, really nice tool, especially for those that send out invoices in not every client gets a traditional monthly invoice, but you have a blend of when you send your invoices out. This is a great way to just create the ones that you need to create when you need to create them based on the billing category. Okay, so that is our first topic, the billing categories. Our second topic here is talking about our new settings for calculating interest. So just as a recap, previously, as I mentioned at the top, if you had turned on interest for your invoices that were unpaid, it was only calculating them as compound interest. In other words, as every month went by and there was, say you had a $100 bill that was unpaid and you had, a 10% a month interest. So the next month it was $110. Well, then the next month it would be 10% of $110. It would compound. However, we did learn this year actually that there are a couple of states that don't allow you, if you charge interest, to charge it as compound interest. I know Georgia is one state. I don't recall off the top of my head what the other state was that had that same rule in place. But it also just in general adds the flexibility. Some people may just want to and need to apply simple interest, in which interest would only be calculated every month based on what the actual balance was at the beginning, not the compounded interest on top of interest. So let's talk about how you go about setting those up in TimeSolv. First of all, you can turn on charging interest at the full default level, if you will, by going under clients and settings. And you can probably guess where I'm going to be headed here again. And yes, I'm going to be going to invoice settings. So under our invoice settings, you'll notice here that this has always been here, the apply interest and the interest rate. If you want to apply interest to every single invoice that goes unpaid after our payment terms, you simply check this box. But what's new here is now you get to choose whether you're going to charge compound or simple interest. Now, by default, if you were a firm that was already using already had interest turned on, it's going to be it'll stay as being compound interest for all your existing clients and matters and balances. That won't change because that's how it was previously. So by default, it'll come on as compound. You can change it to simple if need be. Over here is where you would apply the interest rate. Now, the interest rate is an annual percentage rate. So if you charge 5% annual interest, you would just simply put like say 5%. If you charge say 1% monthly interest, so every month that goes by they don't pay, you charge them 1%, then you would actually put in here 12 as your percentage rate because it's 1% a month times 12. Or if you charge 1.5% interest, you would do 1.5% times 12, which would be 18%. So over the course of a year, if a bill went unpaid, it would accumulate 18% of the original balance as the interest. Okay, so just to be clear about the percentage rate that you put in, it's an annual percentage rate that gets calculated obviously on a monthly basis. Then as your invoices or statements are generated, that will create the interest. So let's just say I'm going to do 5, well, I'll do 18. Let's say it's 1.5% a month, and it's going to be compound. The other thing you want to make sure you do is whatever the payment terms are, because obviously if you have a net 30, then that means interest will not be calculated until day 31 because you gave net 30 as your terms. You also are allowed to put in some sort of grace period. So you could put in a grace period after that net 30 if you'd like, of say 10 days. That means interest wouldn't start being calculated until day 41. Okay, so just so everyone's clear on that. I'm just gonna put 0 for now. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and uncheck this. So that's at the global level, and that will be for any new, and this is important, any new invoice that you send that you've turned on interest to apply interest here. Again, it's not going to retroactive. If you turn this on right now, it's not going to retroactively start charging interest for past invoices. Okay, it'll be for this moving forward. That's generally how it works for most everything in TimeSolv. You can also go to specific clients and matters and apply interest to just those clients and matters that you would like for whatever reason. I'm not sure what circumstances there could be, but you could go to a specific client here, go to your invoice settings, turn on apply interest, turn on compound simple. Everything will be basically the same. At the matter level, let me turn this back off again. At the matter level, same thing. Go to invoice settings. You can even do it right at the matter level, turn on apply interest. I want to make clear on this matter level as well, this interest start date, you can essentially ignore this. This is a requirement setting for firms that are doing, when they move to TimeSolv, this is part of the conversion process. If they have matters that they've already started charging interest for, and then they move to TimeSolv as a new user, we'll want to know what the interest start date was before they were using TimeSolv. Might be, maybe they started charging interest and there's a balance of whatever, $1,000, and they started charging interest in, September of 2017. That's, you'd want to put in the date here. So if you're doing this at the matter level, you would essentially ignore this date, and then everything would be the same. Again, you can change the grace period. So you can do it, again, like most things with TimeSolv, you can get as granular as you need to right at the matter specific level. You can start charging interest. You can do it at just the client level. And then of course you have your global settings. I'm assuming most firms that charge interest are going to be doing it for all of their clients, and we'll want to turn that on under clients and settings. But the good news is you now have the ability to determine whether you want that to be simple interest that's calculated or compound interest that's calculated based on your needs or the requirements for the state that you happen to practice in. Okay, let's move on now to our next topic. And before we do that, I'm going to come to my time entry screen, and I'm just going to start this timer, and I'll show you why in a minute. Okay, so our next topic was, as you may remember, the idea of when there's a running timer and you're trying to generate invoices, what's going to happen now in TimeSolv. This is a nice way to make sure that any running timers are accounted for in TimeSolv. We know we're all human, and there is not out of the realm of possibility that people start running timers and they forget that they're turned on, and they run for days and days, weeks and weeks, months and months. I actually just heard the other day about a client who I think had a timer running that had accumulated 19,000 hours, if I recall, something like that. I don't remember exactly what the number was. But the point is, I have a timer running now. And of course, for myself, I can see that because in the upper right-hand corner, this newer feature we rolled out earlier in the fall, no matter what screen you're on in TimeSolv, you can see that you have a timer running. The clock is moving. If you hover over the time itself, it'll show you the details for that time entry. You can also click on the timer up here to stop it. Now, this is great for you personally as a timekeeper, but what if somebody else at your law firm who is, or whatever your, whether you're a law firm, accounting firm, whatever the case may be, has a running timer and you're the one doing the bills. You may not necessarily know that when you go to create your draft invoices, that somebody 3 cubicles away or in the office upstairs or whatever the case may be has a timer running. Now, there's 2 ways to go about now to determine that. One, I showed, I think, in one of the last Wednesday webinars I did. You can go under Time Search. If you click More Options, there's now a timer category, and you could say, show me all running timers for you can just pick your date range for all professionals, and you can hit search. And in this case, it found my running timer as well. Okay, so that's fine. But perhaps you aren't doing that, you forget to do that, whatever the case may be. You go to create your draft invoices now, and I go under Invoices Drafts, and I go to New Draft Invoice. You're going to get this message now if there's a running timer in your TimeSolv account. They'll tell you there's one time entry, or it could be two time entries. Maybe it's three time entries, has a running timer and might not be included in the draft invoices. Please review, so on and so forth. You can ignore this and continue if you'd like. Or if you click on review the time entries, it's going to take you right back to that same screen that you saw previously from the search. It's going to take you back to the running timers that we have going. And then you can stop the timer right here if you'd like. So again, if somebody else in your system and you're and a support user or an admin user, you'll be able to stop the timer for them. You can adjust the hours then, you know, by editing the time entry and fix it. Because more often than not, if there is a running timer happening, it's a mistake and you need to fix it. Now, it could very well be that, you know, you're a busy law firm. There's 7, 8, 9, 10 users, whatever the case may be. And when you go to happen to be, you know, doing draft invoices, somebody is just running a timer for a time entry that's going to be created, you know, next month or whatever the case is. And then you could just ignore that when you see the screen, just ignore, or we could, you know, review the time entry, see that, hey, oh yeah, it's somebody that just started this today, or, you know, if it's today's date, it's obviously something that needs to be, you know, continue running. So then you go, okay, fine, go back to your draft invoices, create new drafts. And then when it gives you this message, you can just ignore it and continue because you've checked at least on that time entry to make sure it's not going to be impacted when you create your draft invoices. Okay, hopefully, I think it's a fun little tool to really make sure that all your time gets captured that needs to be, nothing gets missed, and we don't have timers that are just running forever and ever and ever and ever. So I think it's a nice little feature add. Okay, now let's talk about, it's the new year. This is an opportunity or a time when a lot of firms will be creating or updating their hourly billable rate. So how do we go about doing that in TimeSolv, and how do we how does that impact time entries that you may already have in place? So it should be, it's pretty straightforward when you need to actually update time entries, or excuse me, not time entries, when you need to update billable rates. But before we go and do that specifically for each of our users, let's step back and think about it a second. And you need to think about, do I have any clients or matters that I started work for them in 2019 and they're expecting or would be surprised, or you've negotiated that no matter how much the work goes into 2020, you're going to keep charging them at the same rate that you had in 2019. Maybe you're doing work for a firm for a period of years and you started the work for them in 2019, and part of negotiating the deal was, and they may have asked the question, what happens if your billable rate changes? And you say, hey, look, we'll lock you into whatever our rates are here in 2019 will always be the rate that we'll charge you, even if we're doing work for you 2 years from now. So the way that you can easily adapt to that is using our global rates. So before you do any changes to specific timekeepers' bill rates, let's create a global rate that you could apply that is going to hold our 2019 rates as they are. So I'm going to go ahead and go under time and settings, and this is where we can access global rates. Now you can create as many and different global rates as you need to. For example, and these are some examples I have, if you maybe give a discount to nonprofits, you can apply that to any nonprofits you have, you know, a 20% discount. I already have 2016 rates. Maybe you have a 5% adjustment rate you want to do. Maybe you have a rate for a client that you do a ton of matters for, and you created a, you negotiated a specific rate for them, and then you can apply that to every, you know, you just say for Best Buy, any matter I do for Best Buy, I'm going to apply the Best Buy global rate. In this case right now, I'm going to create a new global rate, and I'm going to call it my 2019 rates. I'm going to hit save and new. Oh, I'm going to give it a description. Rates for 2019. There it is, 2019 rates. I want to edit these rates now. When I come over here and click edit rates, here's their rates as of right now. As of, well, I should say, yeah, as of right now. These are the 2019 rates. So let's just duplicate them over here. 75, 200, 275, 225, 150, 175. Okay, That's in place now. So let's go ahead and update and have our new rates for 2020. So you would go under account to professionals. And for each professional, I'll start with myself here, the Scott Laidlaw account. Down here in this column, the right-hand column, you'll see the default rate, 275. I'm gonna charge $10 more this year, 285. Okay, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna update everybody's rate. So Benny Barnes, I'm gonna charge $10 more an hour. It's always a good idea to every year you should be incrementally increasing your billable hour rate. Doug Cosby is a support user, so I don't need to worry about, they don't have a rate, as you can see, support. So let's do Mike Hagman. Mike's gonna be at 185. And Tony Hill, it's gonna be 210. Everybody's going up $10. And Dennis Thurman is the last one. Okay, so now you've updated the rates for them. They could update them themselves. You could have them go in and update the rates, so you're not having to do this if you're an administrator. But now notice if I come under here to time and settings, and I go to my global rates, and I click on the 19 rates, I go to edit them. Notice that it's now showing the default rates, what I just entered, and we now have our old 2019 rates. So now, if you had a client in Matter that you were just charging them the regular defaults for 2019, but you know that you still want to charge them those same rates even though you're doing work for them in 2020, you would go about by doing that by going into either the client level or the Matter level. Let's just say we do the client level. Under the rate by over here, instead of doing the timekeeper default, you would do a global rate and say, I'm going to give them the 2019 rates and hit save. This would now mean that any new time entries that you've created from this moment forward would show the 2019 rates. So that takes care of any new time entries that need to have that old rate, essentially. But what happens if you already have time entries that you need to update the rates on in whatever fashion you might need to? So it's kind of going the other direction. Perhaps there's rates that you created, there's time entries that you've created in this past week since January 1st that need to be charged at the 220 global rate. The 2020 new default rate is what you want to have them updated to. How can you update time entries that haven't been billed yet to the new rates? You could go under time and settings. Then you go to rate changes. This is how you can mass update. Let's find any time entries from January 1st to today and hit search. And you notice I have 2 time entries that haven't been billed yet. And here was my old rate. I created one on today and one on, looks like the last Thursday. My old rate was 180. My new rate is 220 here. This old rate was because I think I had this as a global rate of a discount of some sort. But I want to update it to this new rate. So I would simply select the time entries that I want to update, hit update rates, and now they've been updated on the, it's a simple thing. This is a great feature that not a lot of people know about with the rate changes, especially those type of firms that do contingency billing. And I know because I've talked to some firms, they've been involved and done, these are class action suits that may go on for several years before they actually can generate the final tabulation of all of the work that they did. And I know that in some areas, they are allowed to update their old time entries to their existing rates so that if they were working on something in 2016, whatever the rate was then, they can update that to today's rates. This is how you would do that. You can actually search by the specific client. It matter if you'd like, you can go back to that 2016, find all of those old entries that have the old rate that was what you were charging at the time, and update them all to their new rate with just a couple of clicks. So it's a great way for any unbilled time entries to really change the rates as needed to fit whatever circumstances you might have because you've changed your rates for your timekeepers. Hopefully everybody finds that useful. I think global rates is a really wonderful tool to use. Just keep in mind now, like for example, I had my global rate, I had a 20% nonprofit discount I give to nonprofits that I work with. Since I changed my default rate, I need to change what the 20% discount is because, now 220 was, the 20% discount off a $275 billable hour. I need to update any rates that are based off a percentage, you need to change those manually. Same thing with this 5% discount rate that I might have. So great tool to use, both the global rates and to make mass rate change updates. Okay, that is going to cover it for today, all the topics that I have. As always, if you have any questions, you can always email our support team, support@timesolv.com. You can call them at 1-800-715-1284, and it's actually extension 2. So you would hit 2. 1's for sales, 2 is for support. Or we also, if you have suggestions that you, for feature enhancements, for updates, ideas, and so on, you can always go to our suggestions portal, timesolv.ideas.aha.io. And that is a place where you can, first of all, you can view other suggestions that have been made, and you can upvote on those suggestions, because so that's a great way for our development team will take a look at this ideas or suggestions portal, and those ideas that have been upvoted the most are the ones that are going to get attention because they clearly have the highest demand for that feature request. So if you have a feature that you'd like to see, first of all, go to the suggestions portal and see if somebody else has already made that suggestion. Just you can do a search, and then if they have, go ahead and upvote on it. And if not, create the idea yourself, and then you can see how, if others feel like that's important enough, where they'll upvote for that as well. All right, well, without further ado, I don't want to keep you all past more time than needed here. So first of all, if you have any questions, please let me know. I sort of assumed that as I wrapped up here, if you had questions, you would pop them in. But again, go to the Q&A area. You should see in the group, I think it's the bottom of your screen, and ask me any questions you might have. Otherwise, I see a few people have already dropped off, so clearly they are feeling like they got everything they needed out of it. So if you do have questions, you can always email me directly, scott.clayson@timesolv.com, or you can send your questions to support. So I will send a recording out when I have this processed, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week. Happy New Year to you. Hope everyone has a great 2020, and we will talk to you at our next Wednesday webinar, which will be on February 12th, Wednesday, February 12th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Central, 10 a.m. out on the West Coast. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day, and we will talk to you next month. Thanks, everybody.